Independence morning is like a baby born on July 10th, 1973.
A special good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for locking it in. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. This is a special edition of The Youth Perspective, where we shine the light on the youth of our nation. But ladies and gentlemen, this evening we get the opportunity to be able to shine the light on independence, a spotlight, ladies and gentlemen, as the country, as we mark 50 years of independence. I thought it only fitting to go back to the first independence, to take a look back, take a flashback for the younger audience listening in. This information is going to be beneficial for myself, but also it's going to be beneficial to you. And so if you're in Rumkey tonight, if you're in Cat Island tonight, if you're in Acklands tonight, wherever you are tonight, thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. And we have a distinguished guest, no stranger. You could probably pick up his voice as soon as he starts speaking. But we have retired Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Keith Mason. Good evening. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good evening. Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. Considering my age, I'm in reasonable health.
Yes, you say 89 years
Yeah,
young.
I'm 89. In a couple of months, I'll be 90 years old.
All right. Also, sir, well, we thank you so much for taking the time out and taking to be with us on the Youth Perspective, to be able to educate and inform the nation. And so let's get right into it. We have a lot of information to get through. And so let's go back. Take us back to that first independence. Take us back, I guess, before independence. What was it like when the information first came out, when the moves were first being made that we were going to move for independence? What do you remember?
Well, I suspect Bahamians were looking forward to what's going to happen. Where are we going? We're going into a wilderness that we haven't tread on before. But I recall the Commissioner of Police calling me to his office. I was commanding officer of the Internal Division. I was a deputy superintendent at the time, and I went to his office, his request, his direction, and he informed me that I had been selected to be the parade commander for the Independence Parade, which was going to be one of the big events of the day. And so I was supposed to get back to my office and put that together, write the operation order, write all the orders that were necessary, collect all the people that were necessary from all the uniform branches. And I must tell you that in addition to, must be about 300 people of our own, including our prison officers and immigration officers and cadets and regular police officers. Just before the parade, 1 or 2 days before, I was offered 2 platoons of British Marines.
Wow.
That came from aboard the ships that came to look after the security of the prince, who is now the king.
The king, yeah.
And so we did our rehearsals, and it was supposed to be the very best parade that we had ever seen. We were going to be parading before 50,000, 60,000 people that night. And I recall, and most people don't remember this, but on the 9th of July, I had a tragic incident.
Okay.
A sergeant who patrolled the Bahamian islands by the police plane. The police plane crashed on the morning of the 9th, killing the pilot, who was an American, and seriously injuring the sergeant. I had to stop my rehearsal. I was in charge of the plane and head for the airport. And then where I saw the mangled body of the pilot, and then to Lightfoot Key Hospital, where the sergeant was. By the time I got to the hospital, Sergeant Forbes had died. So you can imagine the mood that pervaded the police force and this country and his family and his friends, having lost these 2 men the morning before independence. But we were not to be deterred. We would not turn back. We continued the rehearsals and got ready for the morning of the 10th of July, 1973. By far the most historical morning in the Bahamas.
So take us to the handover, taking down the Union Jack and bringing up the Bahamian flag for the first time. What was that feeling like? What was the parade like? Tell us about it.
Well, I'm sure that from the response we got, the parade was marvelous, excellent.
Right. Yeah.
But when the moment came for the lowering of the British flag and the hoisting of the new Bahamian flag, the field went dark.
Wow.
The only light you had was at the masthead where the flag was going to be. And I had these two sergeants, Sergeant Williams, who is now gone, and Sergeant Taylor, Sergeant Williams would lower the British flag. The other sergeant would hoist the Bahamian flag. And this was the moment of truth. It can't go wrong. There was no light, and I quietly asked them if they were ready.
Right.
I'm ready to give the order. Have you all got all your knots ready? You're ready to lower? You're ready to hoist the Bahamian flag? Have you got it? Fastened properly so it wouldn't go loose while you're pulling it up and everything. And I got the response they were ready.
Right.
And I gave the order. The Union Jack was coming down
by Sergeant
Williams,
Alfred Williams, right?
And the new Bahamian flag to be seen officially for the first time was to be hoisted by Sergeant Taylor.
Yes, sir. Indeed.
And that was done. Done in record time on the spark of 12 o'clock that morning. And there was a roar on that part as you've never heard a roar before.
Yeah. And so when you initially joined the police force, did you ever see us moving into independence? Was that something on your mind frame?
No.
Okay.
I joined the force in 1955, and that's a long time ago. I was 21 years of age. The deputy commissioner at the time, all the senior officers at the time in the force were Englishmen.
Okay.
And the deputy commissioner was a man called Spencer Harty. And he came to Barbados to recruit 20 men for the Bahamas police force. At the time, there was an acting commissioner of police. He was on vacation, and I think he was just about ready to leave. Eddie Sayers was his name. He was a white Bahamian. Edward Sayers, Sayers Road off Shirley Street is named after his family.
Okay.
And his dwelling is now the embassy for the Haitian people.
Okay.
Right on the corner of Shirley Street and Sayers Road. The man who was acting commissioner of police for the Bahamas Police Force at the time was a man called Eddie Sayers. He was on vacation, and Spencer Hardy was his deputy who recruited us. Well, you could imagine 1955, early in March, he came to Barbados to recruit. I was 21 years old, and there must have been 300-400 of us at the police station to see who would get on. And then the moment of truth came. They started to select men.
Okay.
Select men. And so as the process went on, I found myself among 100, 75, 50. I said, it looked like I going to get a chance.
Right.
And when the 20 was called, I found myself among the 20s. So, we had I don't know what kind of time I would call it, because I'm always seasick. And see, we had 7 disastrous days as far as I was concerned. Just vomiting, just rolling on the sea until we got to Nassau. But fortunately for most of the chaps who came after us, they came by plane.
Yeah. So what was it working in those days, arriving? You're from Barbados, you're in a new country, and you've come to serve the people of the Bahamas. How was it initially for you?
I thought that we were well received. One of the surprises of my life is that I found 2 of my comrades who I had missed from home and didn't know where they were. And when the truck which brought us from Prince George Dock to headquarters, turned into police headquarters, I saw one of my friends who I took the senior Cambridge with and who I had missed for a couple of years, standing with the rifle at the gate. A chap called Ford. And then I met another chap who I knew from home. I met him here. So many of our friends had left. We didn't know where they were, but we found some of them here. His name was Pollard. So there are, Pollards and Fords around. And the story has to be told that there are names of streets in this island and in other islands that are named after many of us who've come from. There's Mason's Addition,
Right.
named after Barbie. There's Wolf Road, named after him. There's Cumberbatch Alley, named after him. And there's several other of those places that are named after people who settled here in the 20s and 30s. Yeah.
Wow.
But you know that in 1840,
Go ahead.
the first 12 Barbadians helped to strengthen what was then a very small police force in the Bahamas. And from that time, West Indians had been coming to the Bahamas to help strengthen the security system. So they decided that I should go to Abaco.
Right.
And there was a man called Eric Hebben who was a corporal. I was a corporal. He was a corporal. He was in Abaco with the people. The father of Margaret Elizabeth, who works right here in ZNS with you.
Yeah.
He had many children and he wanted to come to Nassau to put his children in school. And I took over from him in Abaco in 1959.
Wow.
The trouble was that when I was ready to come back in 1961, I had been promoted, so they threw me in the briar patch, actually. You throw a fella in the briar patch, you think he's going to stuck. He's not stuck. He's just advanced.
Yeah.
So, when I came back, I was promoted to Lance Sergeant.
And I think as you were in 1959, I think as we move forward into the 60s, that's when we would have started to see women come into the police force. 1964.
The first 6 women came to the police force. They sent an English sergeant, a woman called Sergeant Weir. She trained those girls, and she lived with them until all their training was completed. Those girls, a couple of them, one of those girls might have been, I'm not sure, but I think Williams's wife, who is still alive, was one of the 6 girls who was recruited for the first time. Women were recruited in 1964 in the police force.
Right, and that's November 23rd, 1964.
You got it.
As you said, under the training of Sergeant 286 Audrey Way.
I know.
Yeah.
I may be old, but I still remember.
And just for the listeners' sake, those women were Anita Bethel, Theresa Baker, Norma Clark, Alcida McFall, Hildred McLean, and Esther Stubbs. And so what do you remember about that initial phase of when women came onto the force?
Arrangement had to be made for their accommodation. I remember it well. And they were brought into the force. We had no problem with that because, as you well know, there have been 2 deputy commissioners, women commissioners, in recent years. So they've made their own mark in the force. Women have been a good advantage to this police force.
Yeah.
I am still speaking with Sergeant Williams' wife. As you know, he's gone. And she calls me from time to time and we have good conversations. In fact, I have written a book and I'm getting ready to publish that book. But I'm taking my time because if you don't read what you have written, you may have made mistakes that people are going to laugh at. So I'm getting ready to publish that book. And those girls and their history is in that book also.
Yeah. It's so very powerful that even back in the 1960s, the police force started the inclusion to bring men and women together.
But not only that, in 1955, there was an English officer in Barbados by the name of Colchester Weems.
Sure.
In those days, the senior officers carried army ranks. He was a colonel, and he was in charge of CID in Barbados, and then he was posted to the Bahamas as commissioner. You know, these were colonial days.
Yes, sir.
He was sent to the Bahamas as commissioner for the Bahamas Police Force, and he brought with him many good ideas. Improvement in the force, improvement in salary, improvement in accommodation, improvement of uniform, improvement of the system of working. And not only did he improve those particular areas, but he went on a spat of building accommodation, building messes, building canteen, building the police force from inside out, and bring in vehicles. When I joined the force, there wasn't one vehicle for a patrol.
Wow.
And senior officers had a small car, and inspectors going on inspections would have a jeep, and that was it. While Colchester Weems remained, he brought in vehicles from Britain. The new cars came in for patrol. And so we started this system of vehicle patrols. And today we have hundreds and hundreds of motor vehicles that patrol these streets. Well, we have advanced to that point.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and even vehicles with the water and a whole number of things.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I claim the privilege of having trained the first 2 platoons of Defense Force officers.
Okay.
When Sir Lyndon decided that he wanted a Defense Force, he ordered the Commissioner of Police to hand over 6 small vessels that we had for harbour patrol to the Defense Force as the nucleus for their seagoing vehicles. Okay. And he ordered that 2 squads of men be trained. They didn't have the accommodation. I was the commandant of the police college at the time, and they sent these 2 squads to me, and I trained those 2 first squads of Defense Force officers and released them to Coral Harbour.
So were they police officers? Or?
No. These are civilians that came in to be trained for the Defense Force.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's before they became the Royal Bahamas Defense Force.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Royal simply came after we became independent.
Independent, okay.
You got the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Defense Force. We have come a long way since independence. 1973, the 10th of July was a historical day. But we built on that.
Yes, sir.
And it would amaze people to know that in 1985, when the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting was to be held in this country, the Prime Minister called the Commissioner and said we had to prepare for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. The Commonwealth Heads of Government had Her Majesty the Queen, her husband, and 52 heads of government from throughout the Commonwealth. We had to make sure that security was where it ought to be for a time like this.
Yes,
and I was Assistant Commissioner of the New Province District, and therefore it fell on me to write the operation order and to manage the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which we did.
Yes, we did.
Because the last country that did it before us was Australia. And they said, well, call somebody in Australia and talk to one of the officers who did it, see if you could get some information. And when I called and spoke to the superintendent who had supervised the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, he said, but you all can't do it in 6 months. I said, it's not a matter we can't. We have to do it.
Yeah.
It's coming. And we spoke, and I prepared, and I had an excellent staff that assisted me in getting all this information out. And we did the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting without one slip. In fact, I still have a certificate that Sir Lyndon gave me for having done an excellent job.
Wow, that's tremendous. And so as we look back on now the 50th, 50 years ago, you had the first independence. What are you most proud of when you look back 50 years of what have you have done either in independence or together?
I am proud that we've come from a colonial system to a government with a cabinet and a prime minister and our own governor general, and we can run, and we've been running the country for the last 50 years. It didn't go to bottom, it hasn't sunk. We've come a long way. I've seen more educated young men and women. There are doctors and engineers and carpenters and masons and people who are working out there. We have a university.
Yes, sir.
When the Honorable Perry Christie started named the University of the Bahamas, and I have a granddaughter who's a lawyer since then. Mm-hmm. She's my oldest granddaughter, and she just won a case in the Privy Council. Mm-hmm. She's the youngest barrister to have won a case in the Privy Council. Mm-hmm. So we have advanced. We are going places. There's still a lot to be done. We are just like the good, there is the bad. We are inundated by crime. We have too many guns. We have too many murders. We are losing too many young men and women. And then there are other things that are being pushed on us that possibly that sour us. But we have to go. We have to climb up and get it done. Mm-hmm. And I think we are going forward. Almost every doctor you go to today is a Bahamian doctor. Mm-hmm. Whatever area of medicine it is, he's there. Mm-hmm. We have our own nurses, and we have a cabinet. For years we've been having our cabinet that's been performing, and the country is moving forward. May not be moving forward for some people, or may not be moving forward as fast as some people think it ought to move forward, but then that is life. You have your idiosyncrasies, you have your problems, but you also have your advances, and I think we are advancing.
And so as we get ready to wrap up...
Don't forget, when I joined the force, we didn't have one senior officer who was a Bahamian. The father of, I'm trying to remember the doctor's name, he was the first senior officer I can remember. But then we have all senior officers who are Bahamians. Yes. All. All. From the commissioner right down to the last man is an officer, is a Bahamian officer. Have we advanced? Our medical officers, man in charge of the hospital, the minister in charge of everything is a Bahamian. Yes. Our parliamentary secretaries are Bahamians. So, and all our senior civil servants and junior civil servants are Bahamians. Yeah. Who run the customs is a Bahamian. Who run immigration is a Bahamian. Who run the police force is a Bahamian. And we have a number of young Bahamians who are joining the work in the maritime section. You have the cadets and the little recruits, and they're moving forward. Yeah. We are moving forward in many areas.
And so as we get ready to wrap up, you mentioned what you're proud of in terms of 50 years of independence. Can you list one thing that you are proud of, or maybe a few things that you're proud of over your extensive career with the police force as well?
Well, I am proud, firstly, to see that Bahamians are running their own country. That's the first thing. I'm proud to see that, for instance, in the police force, from top to bottom, are all Bahamians. Even in the special areas of the force, the scientists are Bahamians. Yes. All our senior officers who are running the various sections of the force and units are Bahamians, and they are moving forward.
And so as we wrap up, any closing comments you want to leave with the listening audience on this wonderful show?
I simply would like to say to the Bahamians, don't give up, move forward. Educate your children. Education is the key. Educate your children, and Bahamians have been educating their children for years and years. They're making sacrifices to send them to colleges abroad, to send them to universities. They must not waste their time, but come back home and add to the forward and upward movement of this country.
Yes, sir. Well, we thank you so much for joining us on this special edition of The Youth Perspective, ladies and gentlemen. And I pray that it blessed you. I pray that you had a whole lot of information to dig into when you heard the voice of retired Deputy Commissioner Mr. Keith Mason. And of course, 50 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, on July 9th, going into the 10th, 1973, he was the parade commander at that time, and of course took part in that first independence. And ladies and gentlemen, we get set now to celebrate 50 years, and so we are so thankful. And you want to send Happy Independence? Bahamas?
Happy Independence to the Bahamas, the entire Bahamas, my friends, my enemies, everybody. Enjoy the time.
Happy Independence Bahamas, and we thank you so much for joining us on a special edition of the Youth Perspective. Have a great evening, and Happy Independence Bahamas. Make sure to be safe. Have a great evening.
Nassau is the capital, Bahamas. Bimini is the gateway, Bahamas. 1492, Columbus landed. 1973, we were free. From Nassau to Inawa, Bahamas. From Freeport to Miguana, Bahamas. Tourists love our country, Bahamas. 700 islands, Bahamas. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Happy anniversary, Bahamas. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Golden anniversary, Bahamas. Regarding in Exuma, Bahamas. Fishing in Long Island, Bahamas. Sailing on the Melbourne, Bahamas. Diving, conking, West End, Bahamas. Peas and rice and fried fish, Bahamas. Pineapple from Iluka, Bahamas. Flamingo from Inagua, Bahamas. That island started breaking spray, Bahamas. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Happy anniversary, Bahamas. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Golden anniversary, Bahamas. Nassau is the capital, Bahamas. Bimini is the gateway, Bahamas. 1492, Columbus landed. 1973, we were free. Jungle to on Bay Street, Bahamas. They go to church on Sunday, Bahamas. Come solid on the weekend, Bahamas. Catching crab and Andres, Bahamas. Independence, Bahamas. Happy anniversary, Bahamas. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Golden anniversary, Bahamas. One nation, under the sun. We love our legacy, our history. Our future love, bright and clear. We salute, we need and fly. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Happy anniversary, Bahamas. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Golden anniversary, Bahamas. Happy Independence, Bahamas. Happy anniversary, Bahamas. Dance and celebrate, 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 Bahamas.